The Urban Dictionary defines messed up as something that just isn't right, as in the phrase, man, that's just messed up. And in Matthew chapter 23, we're going to see Jesus address the situation, and to be honest with you, man, it's just messed up. So if you'll turn to Matthew chapter 23, we're just going to look at the last three verses 37, 38, and 39. Matthew chapter 23, 37, 38, and 39. Now, Jesus is speaking in the temple at this point in the city of Jerusalem. You say, well, how do you know he's in the temple? Because chapter 24, verse 1 says that Jesus left the temple. so that's where he's at. So he's in the temple complex when he makes this pronouncement. So Matthew chapter 23, verse 37 says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing? See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Now, where this happens is important. Matter of fact, he mentions it twice. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem." Now, the city of Jerusalem has an interesting history. The city actually is never mentioned by Moses. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Torah, the law, the first 5 books of the Bible, none of them mention the city of Jerusalem by name. There's a reference to a place called Salem that might be Jerusalem, but the word Jerusalem itself never occurs in the writings of Moses. As a matter of fact, under Joshua, they did not take the city of Jerusalem. Even in the days of the judges, they took part of it, the northern end of it, but they did not take the stronghold, the citadel. It would not be until the days of David the king, 400 years after they come into the land, that they actually take the city of David. And David said, "Whoever climbs up by the water shaft." Now, we discovered that. Today it's known as Warren's Shaft because the man who discovered it was a man named... Okay, some of you, pretty sharp. A man named Warren found it. It's just a shaft that they would bring water up into the city of Jerusalem during a time of a siege from a collection point down underneath. And so they take the city. Now, David is very wise. He uses the city of Jerusalem as his capital because it didn't belong to anybody before that. So no, it wasn't one of the 12 tribe cities. And so it's taken by David, made his capital. But not only is it made his capital, David, later in his reign, is going to bring the tabernacle there. It's this big tent thing that they worshiped in. And his goal was to build a temple, but not be until his son Solomon that a temple would be built there. And so after the time of David, Jerusalem becomes the most important city in the Bible and the most important city in history. Because this is where not only would the political center of the nation of Israel be, but it was where their religious center would be. And the city of Jerusalem represents the power and the presence and the people of God. Inside the temple, there was a little space called the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies, there was only one item, the Ark of the Covenant. And on top of the Ark of the Covenant was what's called the mercy seat. Now, why is it called a mercy seat? Because somebody's going to sit on it. Man, y'all need to come on now. Y'all catch up with me here. So you would say, well, whose seat is it then? Who's supposed to sit on it? God would sit on it. He would ascend in the pillar of cloud. It is the throne of God. And so it represents the presence of God. But not just the presence of God, it's the presence of God with his people. So when he says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem," he's not talking about the physical city. He's talking about the people of God, the descendants of Abraham. "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem." And we understand this. Some cities come to me more than just a town and some buildings. It comes to represent, like if I was to say to you, Washington, you would think it represents fools. Sorry, couldn't resist. Washington represents the seat of government for the United States. And so you'll hear, like reporters will say, word came out of Washington today. Because it represents, it's not just a city, it represents the government, by extension in some ways, the entire country. Or if we say Hollywood, we're talking about the fools on the other coast. So Hollywood represents the millions of dollars that you have given to be entertained. Now, we don't get a whole lot of amens because we're sitting in a Baptist church and thinking, am I supposed to go to movies? So like you don't want to say amen, like you kind of, look, I know you go to movies. And you still won't say amen because you're scared to death. It's okay. It's all right. I mean, Hollywood represents the movie-making industry. You go to them, you rent them, you buy them, you stream them. And so Hollywood represents not just like a place or some words on a hill, but it represents the whole kind of entertainment industry. And in some ways, it also represents cultural values that we usually don't agree with. But Hollywood, it's more than a place. Or if we say Cape Canaveral. Cape Canaveral represents the crowning achievements of science and technology and aeronautics and physics and all those things together, because it's from Cape Canaveral that we've launched men to go to the moon. We've launched all kinds of satellites and rockets and things into space. Now I just want to digress for a few minutes, those of you who are interested in scientific things. Why in the world would they put rocket launching stuff way out at the very tip of a state that gets hurricanes every year? Why in the world would you do that? Well, here's the reason. If you're standing at the northern axis of the globe, it takes 24 hours to go this far. But if you're standing at the equator, you got to go a whole lot faster to get all the way around 24 hours. So the closer to the equator you are, the faster the earth moves. So if you get out of a moving car, the faster it's going, the faster you're going when you get out. Now, don't try this at home or in your car, but you understand the principle. So if you launch them close to the equator as you can get, you don't have to have as much fuel because the speed of the earth helps the rocket get going. That's why they always head off to the east. And so some of you, that's the only thing you remember from the whole day. But anyway, and so Cape Canaveral represents that. Now, unfortunately, not every place represents something positive. Some represent evil, like Auschwitz. It's not just a place in Auschwitz, Poland. Auschwitz represents the pinnacle of evil, the pinnacle of wickedness. It represents genocide and hatred and racism and a whole host of other things. When you say Auschwitz, it represents all of that. It was not just a camp. It represents so much. So when he says Jerusalem, he's not just talking about a city in the Middle East. He's talking about a place that represents the presence of God, but also the people of God. And so he's saying to the people of God, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem." And what have they done? Well, they have killed the prophets and stoned those who are sent to it. "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it." Now, who are the prophets? When you hear the word prophets, sometimes you think about the people in the Bible that are called the prophets: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then the book of the 12, we call the 12 minor prophets: Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. And those are prophets. But there are a lot of people in the Bible that are prophets that didn't have a book named after them. Nathan, Elijah, Elisha, there's a guy named Micah, Micaiah. There are lots of them. But a prophet is more than just someone like that. A prophet is actually a spokesperson for God. Here's how the Bible defines a prophet. Exodus chapter 7, verses 1 and 2. "The Lord said to Moses, 'See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You will speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land.'" Aaron was going to be the prophet, the mouthpiece, the spokesman for Moses. You see, if you belong to God, you are a prophet because you are supposed to be a spokesperson for God. We don't have very many people feeling prophetic this morning. I'm telling you, if you belong to Him, you are a spokesperson for God. You represent Him. And so he says, Jerusalem, and what's shocking is that the people that have killed and stoned them are not the outsiders, it's the insiders. It's the people of God. It's the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. "Oh, Jerusalem, you are the ones who have stoned them." Now, why in the world would you kill and stone the messengers of God? Well, let's be honest. You don't stone them because they tell you that God is good. You don't stone them because you talk about the mercy of God and the grace of God and the glory of God. Do you know why you stone the messengers? Because sometimes the messengers of God come with a warning from God. And people don't like to hear your life doesn't match what God wants. People don't like to hear you stand guilty before God. You have disobeyed God. And there is a penalty. There is a punishment that comes for disobeying God. That's why they stoned them. That's why people reject the messengers of God, because they don't want to hear the message of the warning of God. Now, just think about this. If there is no warning, we don't know that we need forgiveness. And if there is no punishment, there is no penalty, there is no price for our disobedience before God, then there's no reason for Jesus to come. The reason Jesus came is because there is a penalty. God has warned us, you are guilty. We have broken His law, and so He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to pay the penalty for us. That's what makes it good news. If there's no bad news, then there's no need for good news. And so the prophets have come and warned. And it's shocking. They did not heed the warnings of the messengers of God. Now, I teach some classes face-to-face, where I'm there and they're in the class and we go for 5 hours at a time. Just let that simmer for a moment. 5 hours at a time. But also teach a lot online. Works out great because I can do that around my schedule. I don't have to make my schedule fit class. I can, do it at 4 or 5 in the morning when I'm up. Now, the fascinating thing is the way the whole scheduling deal works with the graduate school I teach at, Gateway Seminary. It's kind of funky, and so what happens is class will start tomorrow, which is good. That means that the students can all watch the Super Bowl tonight without thinking, I got to do stuff for Smith. So it starts tomorrow. So they have 1 week to do the set of assignments for each week. But because of the way the schedule works out, the last week, they don't have till the following Monday to get the final. They only have till Friday. Semester ends at Friday. There's a deadline. So a month before the final, I start communicating with students at least twice a week. And the week before, they get communicated with every single day. Note, the final is due next Friday, not the following Monday. Note that the schedule is different. The final's due 3 days before most assignments are due. Please put it on your calendar. Please have your spouse, your kids, your dogs, everybody warn you it's due by Friday. I'll open it up early so that if you do your work on the weekend, you can get it done the weekend before. And so they are warned over. Now, why in the world do I warn them like that? Well, here's the reason. Because they're students. Now, if you've never been a teacher or a professor, let me just kind of explain to you the way that it works. Let's suppose we have a class of 50 students. 50. Out of that class, there will be 2 students who will do any of the work ahead of time. 2. Now, maybe you're like, what? That's because you're one of the 48. Yeah, but 2 students will actually do the work. Now, when I say do the work ahead of time, they're the kind of students that contact the professor before the semester starts and says, can I get all the assignments to do next semester? And before day 1, they've already done all their papers and everything. That's why you're going, yeah, you're one of the 48 and proud of it. So you got 2 students. Now, you have about 8 students who will do things ahead of time, meaning a day or 2 ahead. Like they'll finish a couple days ahead or maybe the day before. So they're ahead, but slightly. Then about 40 of the 50, they're the night before or the morning of. Y'all are all going out. You understand that because that's you. Night before. I mean, how many of you remember people walking into class all bleary-eyed in the morning that the paper was due? The reason is because they were not the night before or morning of people. So the reason I warn them is because all of those who wait till Sunday night to do their assignments, turn in Monday, need to know next week is Thursday night that you stay up late. Like they need to be warned. They need to be warned ahead of time. And you know what happens? Saturday, I'll get an email. Hey, I just noticed that the final was due. I'm thinking, man, you've been warned over and over and over and over again. Here's my response to that. Have you not checked any emails or anything for a month? And then usually there's like 24 hours of silence because they're thinking, how in the world do I respond to this? Because they go back and check their email and go, oh my goodness. There they are, Dr. Chicken Man, Dr. Chicken Man, that's my email address. Dr. Chicken Man over and over and over, all these emails, warning them ahead of time. So what he says is that he has warned them over and over and over and over again. In other words, they are without excuse. There have been a parade of people who are speaking for God, who have warned them. And what do? They killed them and stoned them. Then at the second half of verse 37, he pleads for them. He calls to them. How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing? Some translations say, and you would not. You were not willing. You would not come. Now, let me just talk a minute here about the will of God. There is nothing that happens ever outside the will of God. Ever. We don't believe that God is ever caught off guard. That God is unsure. So Jesus is not saying here, man, I would have gathered you, but you thwarted me. Man, I sent some messengers, didn't think you'd kill them. That kind of took me by surprise. Nothing takes God by surprise. Now, when we talk about God's will that way, we don't understand it. Oftentimes I get asked the question, why did God let this happen? And I have to give that great, deep theological answer, I don't know. I don't know. God knows. It's not outside His script, but I don't know. However, there are things that God has revealed to us that we are to understand and we are to do. And that's what He's getting at here. Here's the way the Bible kind of describes this whole thing. It's in Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret things belong to the Lord our God. That means the will of God that we just don't understand, don't comprehend, don't know. That there are things that God understands that we don't. But the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. So what Jesus is saying is, here is what I am saying. I have called you. I have revealed to you that you need to come to me, and you were not willing. These are some of the most chilling, frightening words in all the Bible. You would not. Now, why were they not willing? Why would they not come to Him? Because of the hardness of the human heart. Because we are by nature the children of wrath. Because we are by nature opposed to God. Because we by nature don't want to hear what God has to say. I don't want to fall in line with Him. And so He says, here it is. We're not. Now let's just clarify a few things. Why did they not come? They did not refuse to come because it was too complicated to understand. They did not refuse to come because there were too many options. They did not refuse to come because the message was unclear and they weren't sure what they were to do. The reason that they did not come was because they were unwilling. Because they refused. You see, the message is not complicated. It's very simple. It's very clear and is the only option. We are guilty before God because we have broken His laws and His commands. There is a penalty for that guilt. And either we are going to pay for it for all of eternity, or someone will pay for it in place of us. And that someone is Jesus Christ, who died for us on the cross and rose again the third day. And when we put our faith in what He has done, we are guaranteed heaven forever and forgiveness forever. Look, it's really simple. We sin and God saves. I mean, that's it. It's not complicated. It's not complex, and there aren't 40 different options. This is it. The message is very simple and very clear. So the refusal to come is not because they don't understand or can't comprehend. The reason is because they are not willing. And it's the same with people today. It is a refusal to submit to the authority of God. It is a hard heart. So Jesus is going to make a declaration. He's going to make a pronouncement in the last two verses. See, your house is left to you desolate. Why does he pick the word house? The word house doesn't just mean a building, but it means a household. It was the word that was used in 2 Samuel 7 for the covenant that God made with David, that He would preserve His house forever. He's saying, see, your house is desolate, your heritage, your lineage. Listen, we do not get to heaven because of our genealogy. We only get to heaven because of Jesus Christ. And so He says, that I know you're the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all that, but that is not what gets you there. Your house is left desolate. Because I tell you, I am done. You will not see me again. And he said, wait, time out right there. Time out, wait a second. What do you mean they won't see Him again? They're going to kill Him. They're going to see Him on the cross. Why would He say they're not going to see Him again? The reason is because Jesus, what He's saying here when He says you won't see me again, I mean you won't actually see me physically. He's saying I'm done teaching. I've come to the finish line. Now He's still got some things He's going to do privately with His disciples. But His public ministry is now completed. He says you will not see me doing things in public again until the end. When you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. It's a quote from Psalm 118, verse 26. In other words, Jesus will not do anything publicly until He comes again in all of His glory, and every eye shall see Him, and every knee shall bow, and every tongue confess that He is the Lord. But after this, it's going to be in private. A few years ago, I got this bright idea to join my wife on something she had done. For a number of years, she had worked on election day. Now, I had some people straighten me out in the way I used to describe this. I would tell people, my wife works the polls. This is probably not the best way. So, rephrase now. My wife works the elections. And so I just want to clarify what that is. And you go, man, I learned about space and I can't get that out of my head. So anyway, so work the elections. Well, I got this bright idea. I'd work them with her one day. I would spend the whole day together at this election place. Now, if you've never worked an election, it is an interesting study in humanity. As a matter of fact, it'll make you wonder if everybody really ought to have a vote. And so we'd work the whole day. You're there like at 4 o'clock in the morning, and man, you go until they close. So we had closed, and once the polling places close, then there's this long process. It's very spelled out. It's got this whole long manual, and you have to check each box as you do things. They have to be done in a certain order, and you have to have people from each political party there to ensure there's no shenanigans going on and all that sort of thing. And so it had been closed, and we were getting everything boxed up, and you had to zip tie it all together and put these locks on things, because they want to preserve and protect the integrity of voting, which I think is a great thing. And so there were about a half a dozen of us, and we're getting near the end. I'm thinking, man, we're almost done. And then you have to have people from each party carry all the ballots down to the main place. And so I was the only one stuck doing that. But anyway, and so this guy walks in, and he says, "What are y'all doing?" And I just happened to be the closest guy to the door at the point, and I said, we're getting ready to take everything down. We're closed. What do you mean you're closed? It's election day. And then he just starts off, I'm an American citizen, I got the right to vote. I mean, he's just really pretty belligerent. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm sorry, you could have mailed it anyway, but they're closed. We don't set the deadline. That's how it is. If you're not in line when the clock strikes 0, that's it. And, I mean, he's, finally, I had to do something I hate to do. But finally, I had to look at him and say, look, if you'd like, we can call the police and have them settle this. Now, you don't ever say that unless you're willing to pull out your phone and call. And you hate to do that, but, and they kind of stopped, and of course, he sizing me up. Is this dude really going to call the police? And they turned around and walked out, and I, trust me, he didn't call me pastor on the way out the door. But it's done. It's passed. And so what Jesus is saying is the deadline for my public ministry has come. Now, the people who are working have to stay after, and there's still some things to do. And so Jesus still, in the next few chapters, is going to be teaching his disciples in private. There are things for them to get them ready for when he departs, but this is the end of Jesus' public ministry. He says, you've heard all you need to hear, but you would not come to me. So let me see if I can kind of pull together all that Jesus is saying here and where this hits us. It's like one of these. Now, let's just suppose that you're the doctor. And the doctor says, hey, look, you need to take 1 pill a day in order to live. What would you do? Okay, apparently half of you are going to die. What would you do? Take 1 pill a day. Now, my mom actually, a couple years ago, went to the doctor, and they discovered this thing, and she said, well, how long do I have to live? And they said, well, if we hadn't discovered so early, you'd be dead by now. I don't know if that's good or bad, but take 1 of these a day and you'll live a long time. So my mom takes 1, among others, a day, 1 pill a day. Now, the doctor didn't say you need to understand the formula of the medication. It's not complicated like that. It's pretty simple. Everybody hold up this many. Hold up this many. How many you take a day? 1. There you go. It's not complicated. Okay? It's not like that. He doesn't say, look, I'm going to give you a dozen medications. I hope you can pick the right one. Well, the people who remain will know you didn't. It's not like lots of options. He gives you this pill, 1 prescription, 1 day. It's clear, 1 option, that there's no question. What kind of person would ever say, yeah, I don't think so. You're not the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. I don't like taking pills. I'm not going to take them unless I can wash them down with Coke. Do I got to put them in a pill? I mean, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing, what do we think? Man, that's just messed up. That's just messed up. That's what Jesus is saying. Jesus said, I have the prescription for your life. Come to me, you will be forgiven and spend forever with me eternally in a wonderful place called heaven. But you would not. You were not one. This is so messed up. God has called us to proclaim clearly and simply the message. We are guilty before God, and Jesus can pay for our guilt. It's not hard. It's not complex. And the world hates us for that message because they don't want to hear they're guilty, and they don't want to hear God's way is the only way. But that's the prescription. That's the answer for life. And Jesus says, I want to gather you under my wings. If you come to me, you'll have everlasting life.